Welcome to Becoming Untriggered, a podcast brought to you by psychodynamic coaches and parents of three, Lavinia Brown and Andrew Lynn.
Together we normalise and unpack common challenges faced by couples and parents, explore how these could be symptoms of unprocessed trauma, and support you with the tried and tested tools for you to show up as the mum or dad, partner, and person you deserve to be. Welcome to Becoming Untriggered. Today's episode is going to focus on gentle parenting or respectful, conscious parenting. That kind of approach, which is perhaps completely different to what you received yourself. We want to talk about whether it works, what it is, why people are drawn to it, and what are the pros and cons of trying to be gentle when gentle basically can be interpreted very differently. They're all subjective terms, and how that can go a little bit wrong or too much the other way.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this subject actually, and I think it is actually a collective trauma response, as you said. I think as a generation, we didn't get our needs met emotionally necessarily. And as a result, we don't want to do that to our kids. We want to be good parents, and we've got the time and we've got the resource to research and strategize about how to be good parents. And we've got a lot of information.
Actually, that's a good point. We've got too much information. I think that's one of the problems. Social media. I mean, yes, there were parenting books out there when our parents were parenting. But the fact that not only have you got books and people advocating for a certain approach, you've got people demonstrating it. There's lots of little skits and people acting out. This is not gentle. This is gentle. This is not conscious. These are laying boundaries. This isn't. And it's, like I said earlier, it's subjective to a certain degree. So it can be really confusing if you're trying out something and that something isn't clearly defined. I think that's a big problem. Because it's not clearly defined, you think you're doing the right thing, which is already hard because that wasn't role model to you. And then you're having it modeled to you in many different ways. Yeah. And then you don't know whether you're doing it right or wrong. And there's a massive kind of burden on you to get it right because, as you said, our parents didn't necessarily get it right. So we're desperate not to do the same as them. We want to get it right this time.
Yeah. And we might not even have the potential to deliver what we're trying to deliver at that point in time. So you can say words, you can do actions, but energetically you're not there. You're not in alignment with it, and it just won't work. So then you're going to feel bad. So there's lots of challenges around parenting in general. And I do agree that we've got information overload. But also the information has changed. If you look at even when we had kids 15 years ago, our first child, there wasn't that much of this gentle parenting around.
Well, we were obviously focused on babies then, but there was the baby whisperer.
Yeah.
There was baby-led approaches as the attachment approach, but there was where your baby does it. That was the opposite to what I did, which was Gina Ford. So Gina Ford is one extreme. I'm not even going to get into that because that's, again, a hot topic. And I believe you don't have to take everything she says. You can take it with a pinch of salt. But the baby whisperer is baby-led. So it's the opposite of Gina Ford, which is mother-led.
So let's talk about gentle parenting and what it means.
Well, I think your point's a good one, that you're not necessarily equipped to do it. And that's one of the problems that my clients experience. They don't know how to do it. They know what they're meant to do. They're meant to be gentle. But again, gentle has very many different interpretations. There's a big range of what gentle means. So that's confusing. But if we just pretend gentle's in the middle somewhere, you're not necessarily able to be gentle if you're dysregulated, if gentle parenting was never role model to you, if you're really stressed, if you don't have enough time and space for yourself. So you're not feeling gentle, really.
Yeah. And as a result of that, people can go like even too far into the gentle parenting and almost lose themselves completely.
Definitely.
By giving up all the control to the kids, of being unable to set boundaries, unable to create safety for the kids because they're actually frightened of imposing on the children.
They're frightened of passing
traumatizing
on
the children.
either the trauma that they had or the opposite kind of trauma. Well, let's go more into what gentle means, because many of my clients I see doing this, they desperately want to be there for their children in the way that their parents weren't. But then they end up going too far the other way, and they're not sleeping, they're not eating, because they're spending their time preparing the kids' meals and it's time for the kids' activity. The kids' lives rule theirs. They don't know how to say no because they feel that no is ungentle or not conscious or not respectful. And there's no routine at all. So the kids often pick up on that and they are defiant. They're not responding well. And that's also one of the reasons why we do it, right? We take up a parenting approach because we want our lives to be easy. We want the best for our children, but we also want the children to respond in a certain way. And if you're putting in this massive effort to being gentle, which is not necessarily natural for you, and then your kids are ending up rude, defiant, disrespectful, you're going to have an even worse reaction than when you started. And what you said about having certain words, but your energy is different. I know we touched on this last time, but it's so key to this working or not. I've got a lot of clients who have all the parenting phrases. They know them off by heart, but they're just spouting them. They're not feeling the meaning behind the word. And then their child's having a tantrum. And I had one client whose child had night terrors, like really bad ones. They were going on for like an hour, sometimes 2 hours in the middle of the night. No, I can't think of anything worse. And she was doing everything that she could. She was being empathetic. She was being kind. She was coming out with all these phrases. I can see that you're upset. I know it makes sense. Like trying to validate her child's feelings. But the problem was, I said to her, well, how do you feel at 2 a.m.? I'd be like really pissed off if this was happening a lot. And she's like, I am. I can't stand it. I said, well, what do you do? What's your first reaction when you hear your child screaming? She said, I'm really angry. I said, okay, so what do you do to calm down or remove that anger? Well, I don't. I just get straight up and I go into the bedroom. And I said, okay, right. So we've got something here. You are coming out with the phrases you think you should say, but actually you're really angry. So what is the energy your child is going to pick up in that moment? So we came up with a strategy of, okay, it's going to be really difficult to hear your child crying, but take 5 minutes, 2 minutes minimum to get yourself into a centered place. Then go and comfort her. And it worked. It turned out that the child was crying for hours because the child didn't feel seen.
Yeah.
Yes, she was giving them the words that said, I see you, I hear you, I understand what you're going through. But she wasn't. She was thinking, oh, for fuck's sake, I'm tired. Can we go back to bed? Oh my God, it's nearly morning time. So the child didn't feel seen in their pain and it was ramping up. Yeah. So actually, the gentle parenting phrases were making it worse because they weren't authentic.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of points there. Number one, you can't fake gentle parenting. No. Really important.
Yeah.
You have to be the safety, you have to be the love, you have to be gentle and turn up in your kids' experience like that, and then they will feel the same. But the first point you made also about gentle parenting is that I think there's a mixture of things that kids need in the early days, and love and affection and attention are definitely included, which you could call gentle. But they also need safety and they need nourishment, right? So in order to create safety, sometimes you have to create boundaries and you have to say no. So that gives a kid a certain sense of safety. Now, I've had experiences where kids are doing things that they really shouldn't be doing, and the parents are scared and they're like, well, I don't want to shout at them because that's not gentle parenting. But actually, the kid needs to know that that's not okay. It's like if the kid goes near the fire or goes to cross the road, you need to shout. You need to create a certain dialogue that lets the child know that they can't do that, right? And that's safety. The child, okay, I know I'm not supposed to do that.
Certain people would say you don't ever need to shout, but again,
you can raise your voice. You need to create urgency. You need to create emphasis. You can't, you shouldn't do that, little Johnny, the kids are going to be like, well, that's the same as when I get praise. Like, I don't understand the nuances of what you're saying to me. Some of it needs to be body language, some of it needs to be volume.
Janet Lansbury talks about being a strong leader.
Yeah.
A child needs a leader.
Yeah.
The child cannot be in charge of itself.
Exactly.
So,
and that creates safety, but that comes from emphasis sometimes.
Yeah. So I think maybe baby-led weaning, baby-led attachment, baby-led sleep training, fine. That was not for me, but I can see how it would work for some people. However, at some point, it can't be baby-led anymore. So at what point, and my take on this is that I didn't ever do baby-led. I mean, a little bit more collaborative, but it was never baby-led because I knew that I was going to have to step in at some point. So I'd rather that I was the authority from the beginning and then it's not a shock. And I think the problem with things that are really baby-led, it's very difficult then to assert yourself as the leader when that's exactly what your toddler or your child needs. So how do you do that? Because if you haven't had any practice in it, and if your child hasn't had any practice with you being that leader, that's really difficult.
I'm not sure about that. I think it's a good point, but I just think when babies evolve into toddlers, evolve into young children, evolve into adolescents and adults, they're all developmental stages. And obviously when they're babies, they can't really lead. Like, they have certain needs, but the needs are stay alive, keep warm, keep safe, feed.
Yeah, well, baby-led
Right,
sleep
so
training is letting them get up when they want to get up, letting them eat when they want to eat, for how long they want to eat for, letting them eat what they want when you're weaning.
But then when they start walking and start running around and start doing stuff that can put them in danger, that's when you need to step in and start creating the safety and the boundaries. With the babies don't need boundaries. They're just like in a cot getting fed, right? So maybe the safety with babies is just being there for them, is being led by their needs.
Yeah, I didn't do that.
We didn't do that because we prioritised sleep.
I just think routine's really important, and if maybe that's not gentle. See, we're back to what defines gentle. I think that routine provides safety because it does for me. So why wouldn't it for anyone else? I don't think routine doesn't provide safety for anyone. I would challenge anyone to say that routine doesn't. Obviously, there's flexibility within that routine. You don't want a rigid routine that never changes. But I think routine is paramount. So I think that provides the baby with safety, actually.
Maybe. I think you can make a routine based on anxiety, and then you can make a routine that's got rooted in different energy.
Well,
so it's like a fun routine, or there's a routine of, I'm surviving here. I need a structure to create safety for me because I'm really unsafe.
Yeah, so we're back to what you're capable of doing. In the end, you're only going to be capable of what you're capable of doing. So you might as well, I always say to mums, do what makes you show up as the mum that you want to be. If that looks like a routine, great. If that looks like baby-led, great. Whatever you feel confident in being consistent with, because I think consistency is important, then do that. It's not about what so-and-so psychologist says on social media or so-and-so parenting expert. You've got to follow what you're capable of. And I know I've said this millions of times, but that's why I unfollowed Janet Lansbury at the beginning. I was told to follow her. I was told she's a great parenting expert. Great, I followed her. I couldn't do what she was asking me to do, or what I thought I was being asked to do. So I had to unfollow it because it just made me feel more shame and more of a shit mum. So gentle for me is more about conscious. So gentle, respectful, conscious are sometimes interchangeable. For me, it's more about conscious. Being aware of how your wounds and what you need to feel safe and confident and calm and grounded, what you need to do for those things to happen. That's being a conscious parent. I think that's much more valuable than being gentle. Because, like we said, I needed a routine. I needed a routine for me. I didn't know what the hell I was doing when our first was born. I was terrified of getting it wrong. So having some kind of structure that I was following from someone who knew supposedly better than I did made me feel more relaxed. So I could show up less anxious than I was. If mums are carefree and go with the flow, again, great. But the problem comes up when your child doesn't react in the way you want them to react. And that's what these parenting approaches are about in the end. You want your child to be kind, empathetic, compliant to a certain degree, or know what's right and what's wrong. And if you're not getting those results with any parenting approach, that's going to really confuse you, make you anxious, make you angry, the opposite of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think if you can't do what you're trying to do, if it's not possible for you, then it is going to make you feel worse. And I think everyone probably goes into this stuff with a good intention, because they're like, we want to be gentle parents, we want to be respectful parents. So they're well-intentioned. But it has to serve everyone in the house. So it has to serve the parents and it has to serve the children. And if by trying to stick to a certain philosophy, you're creating anxiety and judgment and blame and shame in the house, then it's not serving anybody.
And this comes up with partners. So often the mum that I'm working with is trying to be gentle, respectful, conscious, and the dad is more authoritarian.
Yeah.
Because their line is, well, it worked for me, I'm fine. Whether they are or not is a different matter. But they are much more harsh, more, I'm the boss, what I say goes. I'm not going to answer any questions as to why. I think that's a big part of gentle parenting and what gets people into a muddle as well. People feeling their children have to be on board with any decisions. And I don't think that's necessarily gentle. That's like collaborative. And I've got some people I follow on Instagram that are really extreme in this. They believe that children should set their own screen time limits. I mean, that would not work in this household. No way. And
our children try and argue that it would. They say the reason they're addicted to screens is because we limit their screen time.
And it might be.
It's a good argument, but I don't believe it.
I don't think I'm too scared to try it out, to be honest. But some people are utterly collaborative. Do you know what? This is about management. This is the same. We're talking about how companies are managed. You either have a hierarchical structure, and the nearer the top you go, the more omniscient, omnipotent, untouchable the person is. Or you have a flat structure where everyone is equal, everyone collaborates, everyone co-creates. Personally, I don't believe that parenting is a scenario for co-creation. Of course, there's room for it, but where a lot of my clients trip up is that they want their children to be on board with decisions. They don't want to create upset. And a child's going to be upset if you're going to be a strong leader, because you do know better than your children. Of course you know better. You've got decades worth of experience and you know how certain things affect you and your children. You know them better than they know themselves. And trying to avoid upset in any form and trying to create collaboration, I think is disastrous.
Yeah, I mean, kids don't have experience, which we have as adults, and therefore they are not always armed with the information they need to make decisions for their best, kind of their highest purpose, as it was. But we are, so we do have to make some decisions. And back to the company analogy, like surely somewhere in the middle is the optimum kind of strategy, where people feel like they're bought in and feel like they have a say and feel like they can be creative and all of those wonderful things, but they have safety and structure and guidance within that framework, good rewards, good incentive structure. So surely the balance of parenting has got to be in there somewhere.
Well, that's what we as parents are striving for, you and I. We try and be, I think it's easy to be collaborative the older the children get.
But that's a challenge with these gentle parenting frameworks and philosophies, is that they can put you on an extreme end of the spectrum with no flexibility to move away from it in certain situations. And really, that's what a family is. It's a moving feast of different situations that require different approaches at different times. So I like the philosophy of gentle parenting, but I do think it can be limited. You've got to be able to step outside the boundaries of it.
Exactly. And I think for that reason, it can be disempowering.
Yeah,
when you fixate on the phrases that are meant to work in a certain situation and they don't work, you're absolutely lost. And it can feel really, really scary. I remember trying this recently with one of our children. And, this was from Dr. Becky, deeply feeling kid. One of our children is deeply feeling. And I used the phrase that she suggested, can't even remember what it was, and it absolutely flew back in my face. And then I was really angry with myself for not knowing how to manage the situation better. I was angry with my child for not responding in the way I felt she should. And then it all went to pot. And that was because I was trying to follow something and trying to be too rigid about what that might look like. So you have to be able to take things with a pinch of salt and to have your own resources. I think it's really important to tap into how do you feel in that moment. If you're really angry about something, I don't think it's bad to show that you're really angry about something. For example, your child hitting you, or your child being really rude or really disrespectful. Yes, your parent might have come down like a ton of bricks on you when you were doing something less rude or disrespectful. So you may have that kind of trauma in your mind of, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be authoritarian. I don't want to lay strict boundaries. But at the same time, if you're not going with your gut, which is who you are, then your child's going to pick up on that. And your child is going to manipulate that.
Yeah.
That's the fear of a lot of my clients going, if I'm being gentle, basically, am I being permissive? Am I enabling bad behavior, which is then going to spiral, and then they then catastrophize that they're bringing up, a mini monster, a mini psychotic, horrible person.
This is the point, right? The point is that women come to you because they probably have got trauma from their past. And therefore, often the response to the child is not proportionate. And this is the thing, you can't actually parent properly. You certainly can't do a strategy if you have emotion in you that can be triggered from your childhood, because that's going to overtake you in that moment. So it's dangerous. If you've got trauma, if you've got repressed anger from those situations in your childhood, then it's dangerous to attach to that anger in that moment, because you might not be able to control it. It might be disproportionate. You might be passing the trauma on. I definitely agree with the philosophy that if you haven't got any baggage, if you've worked through it, and your child does something to make you angry, then a proportionate show of anger is useful for children. They need to learn about anger. They need to understand that anger's okay, that there's no shame around anger, that some people do get angry, that there's nothing wrong with that they're still loved, but you're angry with them. That's all okay. I think the problem is when you're bringing anger into that situation and it's triggered and you're attached to it, and then you are offloading it onto your children.
I'm not talking about a disproportionate angry reaction, but some parents that are following this feel that anger is not allowed, boundaries aren't
100%.
allowed, telling your child off is not allowed.
But it's normally because they're scared of their own anger. So it's normally because you got baggage that you even need one of these philosophies almost to keep your triggers in check.
Yeah, totally. What do I do? Because I don't trust myself. There's a massive lack of trust. Yeah. So tell me about what dads
let's get back to dads. It's very interesting. So I've seen dads that are both ends of the spectrum. So I agree with you. Dads can tend to be more authoritarian because that's the experience they had. And I've worked with dads that completely rejected that and are kind of soft and loving. And then I've worked with dads that believe that children really need discipline and it's their job to provide discipline. And that can come with physical, emotional and verbal, even violence, and that's okay. That's two extreme stances to take. My experience of it, and through doing this work and working with lots of men, is that I believe that gentle parenting and is really relevant in the early years, like we said, and that's from both parents. So love, affection, attention, safety, and nourishment are what the children need to develop their kind of really secure attachment and secure sense of self in the early years. You don't really need to be an authoritarian. You don't need extreme anger. You certainly don't need physical violence in the early days. Because what you're doing at that point in time is you're instilling love and you're instilling safety and you're instilling the foundation of who that child is in the world. And then if you're adding violence in there, and if you're adding extreme anger, then there's confusion. Those things are going to be linked. So I do think that before your children leave the house, they need a different experience. So they need guidance, challenge, inspiration. They need maybe even the instilling of that discipline or support to instill self-discipline. And that's what I think a lot of the men know instinctively that they need to do and deliver in the house, but maybe they just do it too early or at different times, or with that baggage of anger and like a lack of connection, so it comes across in the wrong way. So I think like it is complicated and it's not easy, but I do think that there is a point in time in the childhood's development where it is essential, and it can come from the mother or father, but traditionally it's the father's role, to pull that child out of the nest and out of the bosom and out of the safety of the house and prepare them for the transition into the world.
Yeah, I don't see it as so transitional as you, black and white. I think you should try and be as collaborative as possible from the very beginning. Obviously, as soon as they're old enough to choose what they want to do, and then you make the decision for them that is right for you. So I don't know if that's mean or not, but you're trying to get their buy-in. And obviously that increases as they get older. But in the end, you're going to make the decision that is right for them on their behalf.
In certain decisions, but that's kind of like decisions, which is one thing, which is like moments in time where that could change the future of your children. So we just had one with school, right, where we brought the kids to a different country and put them in a different school. And they didn't fully buy into that because there was a lot of fear around moving, but we had to make that decision. We wanted to make that decision because we thought it was best for them. So that's like a big decision, but the overall experience they have is different. That's the little things on a daily basis and how we turn up and how we interact with the kids all the time.
Yeah, but it's about collaboratively getting into the car, doing the car seat, putting a coat on or not if it's cold. You can be as collaborative as you can, and then you have to be that strong leader that steps in, because at one point that child's not going to have the capacity to make the decision that's necessarily best for it.
No, I think it's a great point. I think that is, like, I hear that challenge a lot of like, we're trying to gentle parent, but we can't get the kids out of the house in the morning.
Exactly.
So it ends up being a nightmare, like a nuclear explosion.
We end up screaming. So you've gone from one extreme to the other, and the child doesn't know what the hell is going on, but they know that when you start screaming, things happen. Yeah. So, yeah, I think you need to be as collaborative as you can from the beginning. For me, that builds trust, collaboration, as much as affection or, love is collaboration. And then you have to be not scared of making a decision that might be the wrong one. That's the other important point. None of these practices will create the perfect parent. None of them. We're all just making it up as we go along. And yes, there are so-called parenting experts out there, but I would love to interview them and give them a truth serum and actually hear how it was for them and ask their children, how was it for you? And I bet it isn't all roses.
Yeah.
It's impossible to be a perfect parent, literally. So these are merely guidelines. And if they don't suit you or they don't suit your child, because remember, different children are different. Getting a buy-in from one child who's a people pleaser is going to be very different from getting one whose modus operandi of getting affection is through being naughty. You've got to be flexible. So I believe in being a little bit more authoritarian, I think, than a lot of gentle parenting people would recommend. But I believe that by putting it in early, that kind of sense of, I know what's best for you in the end, that saves a lot of hassle coming later.
Yeah, I slightly disagree with you there. But for me, I've never been into any parenting philosophy. I think they are a plaster over the cracks. At the end of the day, if you love yourself, if you are safe, if you're not anxious, if you're able to be present, if you know who you are, you know what your purpose is, you are ambitious and you challenge yourself, then all of those things will come through in your interactions with your kids.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the work is not somewhere in between you and your kids in some kind of philosophy or practice. The work is inside yourself to becoming the kind of parent you need to be to turn up in your child's reality.
100%. And remember that none of us knows what we're doing or how to be a parent until we become one. You can read all the books you want before becoming a parent, and then suddenly being responsible for this person that has its own mind and its own will and its own tantrums is very, very different to the theory. So yeah, I think, to be honest, parenting approaches are mindset work. They're mindset work. It's like what you get taught in sales. Oh, it's best to stand up.
Objection
Take
handling.
a confidence pose. Yeah, totally. Objection handling. Stand up. Shoulders straight. This will help you feel more confident. Great. They all work. They do work. But they work temporarily. If inside you don't feel like you're a good enough person to be a good mother, ever, whatever pose you're taking, it's not going to work. So I always say parenting approaches are amazing, but do the work first. You cannot apply a gentle, conscious, respectful parenting approach until you've become conscious of who you are and what your needs are. So for me, it's not about gentle. It's not about respectful. It's about conscious. You are going to screw up when you first become a parent. It's inevitable. So be conscious of how you're screwing up. Be conscious of how you're feeling overwhelmed, how you can't do it. That's the first steps, because then you go on a healing journey to understand why this is, namely probably your parents, and how to heal that. When you've healed yourself, then by all means, you're in a position to apply parenting approaches. But if you've suffered from any kind of attachment trauma, which I have to underline every single time, doesn't mean that you were hit or that you were brought up in a war zone. It means not feeling fully seen, not feeling fully heard, not feeling fully understood by your parents, not having your emotional needs met. And let's face it, most people have. And if any of that happened to you as a child, this is going to come along with your children. So heal that first, because that will always trump what mindset work does. Because when you're in a trauma response, your prefrontal cortex goes offline. So any books you've read, any podcasts you've listened, they're not accessible. They're literally not accessible. So it's not your fault if you're trying to be a gentle parent and it's not working for you. That doesn't mean that you have to throw in the towel. It doesn't mean that you can't be a gentle parent. You can be whatever you want to be, and I would advise you to do what suits you, not what is fashionable. Then do the work first. Clear your baggage, and then you are available to apply whatever method suits you. If what we discussed was helpful, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. For more of the same, check out my social media, The Inner Child Healing Expert, or to work with me, go to laviniabrown.com.
You can find me on andrewlin.net or Life Coach for Dads on Instagram. We work with both individuals and couples. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, please reach out. Thanks for listening.